And finally, new rule. Stop saying that Whoopi Goldberg getting yanked from The View right after she attacked me on The View is karma. There's no such thing as karma. Sorry. Sorry, but life is random. The only word to describe it when a big game hunter gets trampled by an elephant and then eaten by lions is hilarious.
They're disgusting. She's Anna Navarro in your wildest imagination. You could never solo host a show. You will only ever make it as part of an ensemble, and you could never hope to achieve the success that Tucker Carlson has. So you can sit in your little cheap seats all day long and enjoy your little negative henpecking, but your careers are going nowhere, and Tucker is about to dominate in whatever space.
It's called The View?
It's called The View. It's not called The Facts.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting that it's called, I mean, I don't think they meant this when Barbara Walters invented it a long time ago, but it's The View.
Well,
that's the problem in America. There is one view,
right, and
one
that's clearly
true opinion, and everybody else can go sit in the corner.
Welcome back to AllStarBuzz. Thank you for joining us. Now, let's begin. It's no secret that The View has become a daytime circus of political hot takes, emotional rants, and applause lines dressed up as deep thoughts. But what happens when someone finally calls it out for what it is?
I want to talk about Whoopi Goldberg because I got so many texts this week because she attacked me the week before. Sure. So everybody was like, oh, Bill, I get you're enjoying the karma. First of all, I'm going to talk about this at the end of my show next week, teaser. But there is no thing as karma, okay? Get over that. Whoopi attacks me on a regular basis. She says stupid shit on a regular basis. They just happen to coincide.
Picture this, a daily roundtable where logic is optional, facts are negotiable, and everyone's trying to outdo each other with the most ridiculous opinion. That's The View. And at the center of it all, Whoopi Goldberg treated like the wise elder of the panel, even though her statements often leave people wondering if she read the headline or just vibed with the meme. Each episode feels like a game show called Who Can Say the Most Outrageous Thing with a Straight Face. And the wildest part? Whoopi doesn't even stand out because the rest of the panel is often just as off the rails. One day, it's climate change via astrology. The next, it's history lessons that sound like they were scribbled on a napkin during brunch.
That hot mess that they air in the mornings, called The View, had to issue not one, not two, not three, but 4 corrections, legal corrections, 4 legal notes. We only have 3 of them on camera, but look at this.
I have another legal note.
My God.
Both Trump and Pam Bondi have denied allegations of a quid pro quo. I have a legal note.
Not to mention what they did at that debate, where once again, they tried to fact check only one side, and then when their fact checks got fact checked, they cowered. They cowered in fear. I mean, this is a pattern with them.
But then came a moment that broke the routine. Someone outside the View bubble decided to stop laughing and start dissecting, and suddenly, the clapping stopped. By the way, before we continue, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps us grow and share more intriguing stories. Now, let's continue. Enter Ben Shapiro, someone who doesn't just argue, he dissects. Imagine a guy who speaks like a debate timer is counting down in his ear, showing up to tear apart every emotional rant with a stack of receipts and a smirk. Now, he wasn't actually sitting on the View stage, but it sure felt like he crash-landed there with one goal: expose the nonsense in full daylight. The spark that lit the fire? Whoopi Goldberg's jaw-dropping statement during a segment on police reform. She said, "How many times do we need to see white people also get beaten before anybody will do anything?" Yes, she actually said that on live TV.
I mentioned this karma stuff on the show last week because I was relating how many texts and emails I got from people congratulating me on receiving a karmagram from the universe in the form of Whoopi Goldberg's chastisement. So I thought this would be a good time for a little tutorial on karma, which, as Americans understand it, is nothing more than an extension of the common logical fallacy called post hoc ergo propter hoc.
It wasn't some vague comment that could be spun as misunderstood. It was clear, it was raw, and it was reckless. Shapiro didn't hesitate. He snapped back with examples, data, and a history of police brutality cases involving white individuals, completely unraveling the foundation of Whoopi's argument. And it wasn't just what she said, it was how confidently she said it, like it was an undeniable truth instead of a dangerously flawed opinion. Watching it unfold felt like witnessing a TED Talk slap down a high school drama club. While the View panel nodded in agreement, Shapiro stood on the outside looking in, shaking his head like a professor watching students argue gravity doesn't exist. The gap between emotion and fact had never felt wider.
Donald Trump will be sworn in as the 47th president of the United States, yay, on January 20th of this month. Not everyone's happy about it, and many people would like us to be more focused on the insurrection that he personally unleashed. If you ask them, as we discussed earlier, they think it's as bad as like the Holocaust, and you don't have to take my word for it. Here is Sunny Hostin of
January
The View
6th was an atrocity. It was one of the worst moments in American history. And when you think about the worst moments in American history, you know, like World War II, things that happened, you know, like the Holocaust, chattel slavery.
Yeah, the January 6th is right up there next to the Holocaust and slavery.
But that was just the beginning. Things got messier when Whoopi dove headfirst into one of the most sensitive topics imaginable, the Holocaust. In front of a national audience, she declared that the Holocaust wasn't about race. Let that sink in. She claimed it was simply about man's inhumanity to man, brushing aside the very foundation of Nazi ideology that explicitly targeted Jews as a race. This wasn't a slip of the tongue, it was a full-on, confidently delivered take. And, of course, the internet exploded. But more importantly, Ben Shapiro zeroed in like a heat-seeking missile. He didn't just call it wrong, he called it dangerous. Using historical documents, quotes from Nazi leaders, and basic facts taught in any high school history class, he tore through Whoopi's argument piece by piece.
And by the way, out there, that hat that you keep wearing, that red hat that says "Make America Great Again," that tells people that you go along with this. So you might as well just put a swastika on the hat.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Because we see it anyway.
I'm not going to defend Donald Trump ever, but I would never say that we should put the swastika on the cap, because I think you can hate Donald Trump. You can't hate everybody who likes him. It's half the country. I don't want to live in that country. I don't want to live in the country where I hate half the country, and I don't hate half the country.
How dare you disagree with me?
The absurdity wasn't just in what she said it was, in how she tried to justify it afterwards, doubling down in a follow-up appearance and then issuing a written apology that sounded more like damage control than actual remorse. Imagine claiming something so historically backwards that even Wikipedia needs a break. That's the level we were at. And when you add in her past of making similar eyebrow-raising remarks, it painted a pattern, not just a one-time gaffe. This wasn't about cancel culture. It was about someone taking a blowtorch to truth on national TV, and someone else coming in with a fire extinguisher full of facts. Now imagine the setting. Daytime TV.
I'm old enough to remember when it was the conservatives who hated the Jews.
Yeah.
Okay.
Bill Maher, who has been the standard bearer for liberalism and in many ways leftism until the woke went bananas in this last decade, but for decades, that's what this guy has represented in America. I want you to note the tone they all talk with him. I want you to look at Sunny Hostin's body language and the way they look at him and everything else. Just because he is a lefty who hasn't gone completely bananas, here they are talking about the word woke.
Pastel colors, fake smiles, and an audience that claps at anything that sounds remotely progressive. It's a cozy bubble where feelings are facts and slogans win arguments. That's The View. And right in the middle of that bubble is Whoopi Goldberg, armed with catchphrases, vibes, and half-digested Twitter takes. She doesn't come to the table with research or evidence. She brings emotion, and that's usually enough for that crowd. But not this time.
Whoopi Goldberg was angry when Alyssa pointed out that Trump went to the funeral of Officer Diller.
Yes.
On Long Island, and Joe Biden went to a podcast. Look at Whoopi Goldberg's reaction.
Choose what you like there, but for Republicans, it was good imagery.
Really?
1 day later, yes.
And I'm asking that because I was so offended because you know who showed up.
Yeah.
And he was, whether he was asked or not. This is a man who didn't care what happened to the officers on January 6th.
She promotes Joe Biden and Kamala Harris every day on that show. Trump wasn't supportive enough of the cops who were, yes, in danger on J 6th. How does that explain their behavior on a daily basis?
Ben Shapiro didn't play by their rules. He came in from the outside, not to argue, but to dissect. He didn't match her tone, he outclassed it. While Whoopi delivered rambling monologues like she was casting spells with her feelings, Ben came armed with historical records and surgical precision. Her co-hosts could barely keep up. Joy Behar looked like she was watching a foreign movie without subtitles.
The term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words migrate.
Why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice, who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use any term you want.
Okay.
Because maybe that is a word that's triggering, and so let's not use that word. I don't know, want to call it the super far left? But don't tell me the left
had the super far right.
Well, he's talking about the left.
Well, then
okay, but we talked about that. I mean, I think we agree about the danger of the super far right.
Sarah Haynes had the same expression as someone trying to remember a password from 10 years ago. The vibe completely changed. Whoopi wasn't just challenged, she was exposed. And instead of fighting back with facts, she doubled down with her usual defense. I just think, like that alone should end the debate. But I just think doesn't hold up when your opponent responds with pages of hard data. Suddenly, all that confidence started to crack. You could see it in her face, the realization that she wasn't in control anymore. Things really hit a breaking point when Shapiro pulled out the big gunshot infamous defense of comparing Israel and the US to terrorist organizations.
We had a discussion on The View about world superpowers from the sound of it. That's how they got into it. And Sonny Hostin made some comments about patriotism and America and Black America. It's all in there, Jason. I mean, it's all in there. I'm going to tee it up. It starts with Alyssa Farah, who's supposed to be the Republican commentator. And then you'll hear Sonny jump in. Listen.
While seemingly downplaying actual terrorist groups like Hamas. Whoopi's stance? That Hamas wasn't technically a terrorist group, at least not in the way she framed it. On a show watched by millions, she casually blurred the lines between nations defending themselves and groups that fire rockets at civilians. Shapiro didn't let that slide. He hit back hard, laying out definitions, citing global classifications, and pointing to the atrocities committed by Hamas that have been condemned worldwide. It wasn't just fact-checking, it was a dismantling. And the contrast between Whoopi's vague, emotional appeal and Shapiro's relentless precision was brutal. At this point, it didn't even feel like a debate. It was a beatdown. Whoopi, once seen as the show's voice of reason, was now fumbling through excuses while her co-host stared blankly, hoping someone would change the topic. But Ben kept going. He compared her statements to those that had gotten other public figures fired, like Gina Carano, who lost a major acting role for a far less controversial post. The double standard was glaring and he made sure everyone saw it. What we were witnessing wasn't just a clash of opinions, it was a reality check for Whoopi, The View, and anyone watching. And just when you thought it couldn't get more uncomfortable, Whoopi launched into another confusing rant this time about face masks. On air, she claimed that removing masks would let the flu fly in, as if the flu were some kind of magical airborne creature just waiting for a chance to attack. It was bizarre. Even by The View's standards, it was baffling. Shapiro didn't even need to try that hard here. He simply replayed her comments and let the contradiction speak for itself. At first, masks were supposedly all about COVID. Now they're magical shields against the flu? The goalposts weren't just moved, they were kicked off the field entirely. And instead of walking it back, Whoopi went into damage control again. She got louder, more emotional, trying to fill the holes in her argument with volume. She leaned on her go-to move. Well, I just think, like her feelings alone should outweigh science. Shapiro stayed cool. He didn't shout, he didn't get flustered. He calmly pointed out how her argument didn't make sense even using her own words against her. It was like watching someone build a sandcastle while the tide rolled in. Her logic crumbled with every wave of fact he threw at it. Meanwhile, the audience looked confused. They clapped out of habit, not because anything made sense. And the silence between those awkward claps? That was the real truth in the room. As the tension thickened, Whoopi made one final push to hold her ground. But instead of facts, she went back to her safety blanket, emotion. She raised her voice, she repeated herself, and then she dropped her signature fallback. Well, I just feel like, as if feelings alone could rewrite history, redefine science, or win an argument. That line, I just feel like, might work in a heart-to-heart conversation. But against someone like Shapiro? It's the verbal equivalent of bringing a cupcake to a boxing match. Ben didn't even blink. He launched into his usual mix of references, logic, and economic terms half the audience had never heard before. But that didn't matter, because what mattered was how effortlessly he tore through Whoopi's argument like tissue paper. You could feel the shift in the room. Even the co-hosts started to squirm. Joy Behar looked like she was trying to disappear into her seat. The audience gave a nervous laugh, unsure whether to support Whoopi or pretend this segment never happened. And there was Ben Cool, collected and completely unbothered. He didn't gloat. He just let the silence speak. You could practically see the argument's soul leave the room. That wasn't just a loss for Whoopi, it was a collapse. All the emotion in the world couldn't save a viewpoint built on sand. Then came the most awkward, painful moment of the whole thing. The pause. That brutal silence after Shapiro finished dismantling Whoopi's latest claim. She just stopped, stared, blinked. You could see it. She had nothing. It was like watching a computer freeze mid-sentence. Her brain clearly searching for a lifeline, but all that came back was static. And that pause? That 5 seconds of dead air? It hit harder than any insult. It was pure humiliation. No comebacks, no clever retort, just wide eyes and a mind in full retreat. The co-hosts tried to save her with their usual let's agree to disagree nonsense, but it was too late. The damage was done. You could tell they all wanted to hit the emergency exit. And the internet? Oh, it went wild. Twitter lit up with screenshots of Whoopi's stunned face. Memes popped up within hours. People were calling it the most satisfying takedown in daytime TV history. Even Instagram got in on the action, with users captioning her expression like it was a lost episode of Black Mirror. But it wasn't just about going viral. This silence, this total shutdown, it was symbolic. It showed exactly what happens when you enter a debate armed only with emotions, and someone walks in with a mountain of facts. Whoopi didn't just lose the argument, she vanished from it. The fallout didn't end on the show. Once the dust settled, people started digging into Whoopi's long list of questionable takes, and let's just say, it wasn't a short scroll. The internet pulled receipts like they were on a treasure hunt. From bizarre historical claims to completely unhinged statements about race and politics, it was clear this wasn't her first stumble. It was a pattern. Remember the time she argued that Black people can't be racist in the same way others can? Or when she tried to explain economics and somehow reinvented monopoly with made-up rules? People weren't just laughing anymore, they were stunned that someone with that kind of platform could be so off base, so often. And then came the comparisons. Gina Carano, the actress fired from The Mandalorian, had posted something controversial and got the boot immediately. Lost her job, her salary, potential spin-off Severything. Meanwhile, Whoopi makes a statement minimizing the racial aspect of the Holocaust. And what happens? A 2-week suspension. That's it. It felt like a double standard so obvious it didn't even need to be explained. Shapiro made the case crystal clear. Same industry, similar controversies, but completely different consequences. And he didn't let go. He brought up the hypocrisy, the media bias, and the way The View was protected, like a sacred cow. Whoopi might have gotten a slap on the wrist, but her credibility? That took the real hit. Even after all that, Whoopi still tried to claw back some control. She went on The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, gave what was supposed to be an apology, but ended up being more of a confused ramble. She said the right words, but with the kind of tone that screams, "I don't really get why this is a problem." And then the next day, she doubled down again on The View, saying basically the same thing that got her in trouble in the first place. Her defense? Well, I felt like what I said was valid because it felt valid when I said it. Seriously. That was her logic. Not based on history, not on evidence, just how she felt in the moment. It was like trying to return a toaster because it didn't toast your bagel emotionally enough. Meanwhile, Ben didn't even flinch. He calmly referenced facts, historical context, and even legal precedent, just to make it crystal clear how wrong her take was. He didn't yell. He didn't insult. He just buried her argument under a mountain of logic. It was like watching a college professor gently correct a student who handed in a paper written in crayon. And while Whoopi's supporters scrambled to defend her with headlines about emotional intelligence, the internet wasn't buying it. Screenshots, memes, and full-blown takedown threads kept flooding every platform. It wasn't just backlash, it was a full digital reckoning. And just when things started quieting down, Shapiro gave the final push that sealed the whole saga. He released a podcast episode breaking down everything, moment by moment, like a coach reviewing game footage after a total blowout. He didn't just criticize her argument, she dissected them. Sentence by sentence, fact by fact, he highlighted every contradiction, every factual mistake, and every time Whoopi's logic jumped off a cliff. He quoted sources, pointed out legal definitions, and even pulled up statistics that crushed her emotional takes. It wasn't just a response, it was a full-on masterclass in how to destroy someone's argument with calm precision, and the internet loved it. Clips from the episode started trending, racking up more views in one day than The View had all week. While Shapiro sat comfortably in his studio, sipping coffee and quoting Aristotle, Whoopi was left clinging to what was left of her credibility. According to behind-the-scenes reports, she was furious not just about the public backlash, but about the suspension. She felt betrayed by ABC, claiming she followed their playbook, did the talk show apology tour, and still got punished. Insiders said she even threatened to quit the show. But here's the kicker. Being suspended from The View is like getting kicked out of a free trial. The bar is so low, you practically have to trip over it to land in trouble. And Whoopi still managed to crash through it like a wrecking ball made of bad takes. And yet, even after all of that, after the suspension, the internet storm, and the podcast takedown, Whoopi still didn't seem to get it. Her final attempt at damage control was less of an explanation and more of a chaotic spiral. Instead of clarity, we got confusion. Her new defense boiled down to, "It felt true when I said it, so I stand by it." That's not an argument, that's a shrug dressed up as a statement. Meanwhile, Ben Shapiro wasn't even trying anymore. He'd already won. His idea of gloating wasn't jumping on Instagram with a victory lap, it was quoting philosophers and posting links to articles that no one asked for. He was calm, collected, and completely unbothered. The man looked like he had just won a spelling bee while everyone else was still figuring out how to spell logic. This whole mess didn't just expose Whoopi's weak arguments, it revealed something much bigger. When someone builds their entire platform on emotion, applause, and gut feelings, they fall apart the second facts walk into the room. Whoopi entered the ring with glitter and feelings, and left with a headache and a new meme face. It wasn't just a debate anymore, it was a full-blown culture clash. Feelings versus facts, vibes versus evidence, and this time, the facts hit harder than anyone expected. And then came the silence. That deafening, soul-punching silence that hit like a brick wall. Not just from Whoopi, but from everyone. The co-hosts, the audience, even the guy behind the applause sign. It was like time froze for a second. You could feel the tension crawling through the screen. Whoopi had run out of words. She just sat there, blinking, trying to find anything to say. But nothing came out. Her emotional armor had cracked. Her go-to lines had failed. And sitting on the other end of this destruction was Ben Shapiro's mug as ever, like a cat who knew exactly where the treats were hidden. He didn't need to say anything. The silence was his victory speech. You could see it on the faces of the co-hosts. Joy Behar looked like a deer caught in headlights. Sarah Haynes was scanning the room like she was trapped on a sinking ship. And Sunny Hostin? She looked like someone who just realized she bet all her chips on the wrong hand. That silence hit them all. Not because it was awkward, but because it was undeniable. The truth had just steamrolled the vibe, and no one could stop it. No music, no outro, just that moment of stillness that said everything without a word. That's the power of facts when they're delivered like a scalpel. Clean, precise, final. And with that silence still echoing, the internet crowned its winner. Not because Ben Shapiro was everyone's favorite person, he's not. A lot of people think he's smug, robotic, or talks like he's trying to beat the buzzer on a game show. But none of that mattered here. What mattered was that he came prepared, and Whoopi didn't. She showed up with feelings. He showed up with facts. And when those two clashed, it was like watching someone try to fight a calculator with a dream journal. The contrast was so sharp, even people who normally roll their eyes at Shapiro had to admit he delivered a clean, brutal takedown. And The View? They pretended like nothing happened. The next day, they were back to fluff topics, zodiac signs, celebrity gossip, and fake deep quotes. But the internet didn't forget. The memes kept coming. The screenshots of Whoopi's stunned face made it into comment sections everywhere. And Shapiro? He wasn't done. He dropped a full recap episode, treating the whole thing like post-game analysis, pointing out every flaw in Whoopi's arguments like he was grading a failed exam. While she tried to light a sage stick and spiritually recover, he was quoting legal cases and historical texts. It wasn't just a win, it was a statement. The truth doesn't need applause. It just needs one good moment of silence to do the talking. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Also, drop your thoughts in the comments. See you on the next one.